What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got Olly of the Almighty Monuments. So great to be able to talk with you today, man. Thanks for being here.
How you doing, man?
Yeah, doing all right, doing all right. Before we started rolling, I was mentioning I was really excited to see you at the show in Brooklyn. It was, I think you were supposed to come. I remember the date. It was like March 25th of that time in Brooklyn, and sadly, certain circumstances prevented that from happening. So it's great to be able to connect with you now.
It's something, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, first and foremost, though, thank you for giving us some new music to look forward to. We got the new song, the new single Dead Nest out. Is this maybe like a good representation of what the follow up to Phronesis is going to sound like? Or is this just a one little taste or sort of a one off sort of single?
That's a good question. It's I'd say no, because I don't. Who knows what's going to come out? To be honest, creatively. So with Deadness, it's my tune, right?
Yeah.
It's basically my tune, and I'm definitely not going to try and rewrite it for the next album. And some of the tunes, the way we write would be that, Brown writes some full tunes, I write some full tunes. Mike's now back in the fold. Our previous drummer has rejoined us. He's now writing tunes as well. And sometimes we collab, and sometimes someone will write 80% of it, and we'll work out the other 20 with someone else. My point being that you can't call it. And at the very least, it's not something I would want to try and recreate. So it's a good snapshot of where we are now, but that won't be, there might be similarities, with the same band, but I don't think assuming it will be an album of that or an album of whatever the next single is or whatever happened prior is going to be accurate. It could be anything.
Okay, and being that you mentioned this whole collaboration, if somebody were to really get to know all the members of Monuments, would they be able to tell who wrote what in a way? Does every member kind of bring their own identity in the band, or does every member kind of have to follow in a similar vein, it has to sound like Monuments,
Excuse me. It depends. It depends on who you are and what your ears are saying. Some people hear stuff that I've written and think it's Brown, or vice versa, or stuff that Brown's written and they'll say, oh, Olly's really inspiring him, but actually he just wrote some music. Mm-hmm. I think that completely depends on maybe if you're musical yourself or how you're listening. I can hear the difference, but obviously I've got the best. I'm close to it, so I think it completely depends on the individual.
Yeah. Do you find it easier to write music, whether it's riffs or solos, when you're the company of other bandmates, or do you tend to like to use the isolation as the fuel for creativity?
Man, it's both. It's both. When you're by yourself, you have, all the creativity is yours to play with. There's no one's going to say, oh, let's try this direction or that, or change maybe what your initial idea is or was, sorry. But at the same time, all of the pressure is on you to create something that's concise and song length. So it's pros and cons. I think I'm probably leaning towards getting on with my own shit by myself and letting the other members do the same. Because I think because chemistry's cool, man. It's all well and good when magic's happening, you're bouncing off each other. That is great. But I think everyone in the band who does write has such a talent for it that more and more over time, I'm starting to try and butt in less to other people's shit. And at the same time, kind of trying to steer my shit away from other people. But at the same time, maybe I've written something and it's half of a thing and I've hit a wall, and then I need to reach out to Michael Brown, whoever, or the singer, and be like, what would you need? Where would you need this to go to be able to sing over this? Or, do you know what I mean? So every situation exists. It's not a smooth thing, and it's not consistent. Yeah. It could be anything.
Well, because I don't consider, what I think is great about Monuments is you definitely are a very, very heavy band, but I do consider your band to be kind of experimental. You bring real relentless death metal elements, but you have some progressive elements. Like I could easily see you do a tour with like a Cannibal Corpse or a Morbid Angel, but I could see you tour with like an Obscura, or like I could see you tour with like a Periphery or something like that. So I feel like trying new things, it really is. There's a lot of different elements that every member brings into the sound, right?
There is first of all, I think if we tour with Morbid Angel, that'd be a catastrophe for us. But
I don't think so. I think that would be awesome.
I would love to tour with Cannibal Corpse. There's something about that band that I just really can't get enough of. They're not even. It's just so like, what's the word? It's just so like unforgiving, and so they've ignored every trend. They've created trends. They're Cannibal Corpse, right?
Yeah.
They're just such a huge part. I really love that band. I still haven't checked out the new album. Yeah, for the most part, the Monuments thing is a thing. There is a sound. I'm usually chasing a sound. I'm probably less open-minded than the other guys, but for the most part, we are experimental and open-minded. There's a didgeridoo on one album, and there's new things that I'm not going to talk about just yet that will be coming in future music. A couple of new elements, actually. So I think for the most part, yeah, it's like prog metal, right? So trying to do the same thing over and over again isn't really what makes us us.
Yeah.
It's a tricky balance.
Yeah. And does the songwriting ever start off with like a preconceived idea, or like is there like a lot of improvising involved, or like you kind of like a roll of the dice sort of songwriting process?
I'd say it's not really improvised. I'll only speak for myself, because if you're like, for example, Mike is quite just jazzy. He's not a jazz drummer, but he has that muso jazzy thing where he's always, if anything improvised could happen or some off the cuff vibe could happen, he's going to chase that or not try and stop it from happening. He's quite into that. Whereas I'm more like, let's design this thing, let's make it and sculpt it and shape it to exactly what we want. So I'm less into that kind of like jammy, flowy thing. And realistically, yeah, we don't get in a room and just like vibe out after a couple of hours and then listen back and see what we did. That's not really the way. Usually, one of the members will write something probably as far as they can take it, and then if they hit a wall, they'll bring it to someone else and we'll finish it together or throw our 2 cents in.
Yeah, it seems like you have the best of both worlds, where you could work independently and then you're able to summon each other when you need each other for the songwriting.
It's definitely getting to that spot now. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I don't mean to make any. I have a bad habit of doing this with every band I interview, and I don't mean to make you feel old, but next year is going to be the debut anniversary of Gnosis, the first Monuments album. I mean, going back and just seeing how you evolved so much then, like, I mean, how do you look back at your debut album in a way as relation to, you know, the future stuff that you could potentially be writing?
You know what? Gnosis, first of all, Gnosis, that whole thing was really exciting for me because I was young and new to it all, and it was a few levels above what I was capable of at the moment. So it was a big like, oh, what the, you know what I mean? Having said that, the album did come out a couple of years later than it should have done, because we had issues with vocalists and stuff like that, and we eventually got signed and that whole thing. It ended up coming out a few years late, and I think by the time it did come out, it was still well received, and I think this music is still great. But I think by the time it came out, because of the online sharing aspect of this scene of music, a bunch of people had already ripped it off, and I can say that without I'm not accusing anyone of ripping me off, because I didn't write anything on Gnosis. I just, when I showed up, it had already been written, and I was like, yo, this is good, this is fresh. But people had already kind of started, you know, taking parts of what they heard Brown do for a couple of years before it released. So it was a little bit late. So that's how, unfortunately, that's kind of one of my main memories of that album, is that like, should have come out earlier. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, it was our debut album. It was a very special moment. And a lot of the music on that album is some of my favorite music ever. And like I said, I can say that because it's not it's not my music technically.
Yeah. Well, when you came into Monuments, though, like, because I know you like came in when it was already written, but were you kind of allowed to, when you were executing this material live, to kind of bring a little bit of your own mix into the live presence for it?
Um, there was nothing. I mean, it was done. It was ready. It was written. It was ready to go. So there was nothing really for me to add. I think I had a little guitar solo on one song. That was pretty much it. The tunes were there. They hit hard. They were great. They were great riffs, great structures. There wasn't really anything for me to add. And I think at that point as well, I was pretty inexperienced in a few areas. So there wasn't really much I could do. I was just looking up at it as opposed to now looking back at it.
Oh, wow. That's a good quote about it. I was looking up as opposed to looking back. That's really a good quote. That should be a lyric.
I'm a lyricist.
Yeah.
No, I was...
Well, if you are, man, that was one of the best lines ever. That could have been that needed to. You may have to print that on a Monument shirt. I'm just saying.
Think about it.
The band that looks up, not back.
I'll take it.
Is there any though possibility that maybe for the 10-year anniversary, because by next year, hopefully that this godforsaken pandemic is behind us, maybe like a anniversary tour of Gnosis or something like that? Could you maybe see y'all doing that?
I don't see why not. I really don't see why not. Outside of, it's likely that we'd be. I'm not making any promises, but it's likely that we would be on a new album thing at that point. But at least maybe a little UK run or something. I think at one point I knew how to play the entire album. Like the whole band knew how to play the whole album, which I think is maybe pretty rare because some tunes I don't know, but I think some bands write certain things for the live thing and then maybe you have like album tracks, if that makes any sense. So they've all been tested live, and for a while that was our live set. If we had a long set, we would play the whole album. And 10 years is a thing, and Gnosis is a thing, and I'd be down, but I'm not going to make any promises to anyone.
Okay, all right, fair enough. For your guitar writing process, whether it's your solos or your riffs, do you feel that maybe like your soloing is almost representative of a particular emotion that you were feeling? I've always said that a guitar player is very similar to a vocalist, how a vocalist's lyrics or melodies express an emotion. Do you almost use your guitar work to express a personal experience, or use your guitar work as a way to express a form of emotion?
Yeah, of course. That's exactly what it is. It's communication, it's emotion, it's conveying, it's all of those things. And I think as time goes on, I'm probably more in tune with that than ever before. It's not. I think when I was like younger, it was more about showcasing what I could do or trying to put a cool moment in something for the sake of it being cool. Whereas now it's more like it's easier to make a creative decision if you're like, okay, am I feeling this? Am I feeling this? Do I like this thing, or am I trying to make someone else's ears happy? Which has never been the case for me, but it's just, it makes that whole thing way smoother. It's like, this is the note I want to choose or the passage I want to put in, or, whatever. So yeah, it's 100% communication and emotion. Yeah, for sure.
Do you feel that like the longer you work on something, because sometimes you're working on a song for days, weeks, if you're Tool 13 years, like do you feel that maybe like the longer you're working on a song, the harder it is to kind of maintain that emotion in a way?
For sure. Because life doesn't really work like that. At least for me, when I get inspired, I'll write, I'll try and get as much down as I can in that moment. If that's 2 sections or 1 lick or 1 chord progression or whatever it ends up being, or a drum beat, it could be anything. I'll do as much as I can in that moment, but you will reach a point where you're either kind of repeating yourself now, or maybe it's just not really the initial vibe that you wanted it to be. And you'll come back to stuff. I think that's happened with all of my solo music and all of Monuments' music. Some of it Brown has written in a session in a day. some of it in a couple of weeks, some of it start it and then 6 months later finish it. What we're finding now working with Andy is that we can kind of throw him stuff that's almost unfinished. That's a dirty word, but I mean, we can throw him stuff that's maybe not final. And then when we hear vocals on top, we then understand where we should take it. Maybe if we've run out of riffs or don't have a pathway or something like that. So it's a mix of things, but yeah, it doesn't. I don't always have I might wake up and feel ignorant one day and want to do some breakdowny shit, and then the next day I might wake up and want to do something melodic. So yeah, as with everyone else in the world, the feeling you have will change on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I'd imagine too that inspiration sometimes strikes at like the most inconvenient times, right? Like I'd imagine there's more times where inspiration or ideas strike when you don't have a guitar anywhere near you, right?
I was cleaning out my phone yesterday, and there are so many videos of me walking down the street singing riffs into my phone, and many of them won't have been. In that moment, I'm inspired, but it's not. Sometimes I'll get back as soon as I can and put it down, and I'll have that idea. And sometimes, as I'm listening back yesterday, I'm going, I just don't care about this. This is not, what I mean? It doesn't evoke the same thing. So yeah, it can definitely happen. Or if you're on a plane or in a van or something, what can you do?
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, I've always said that like there should be a law that pilots should not be allowed to be artists, because I'm always worried that they'll get inspired or an idea like as they're like landing the plane or something like that. Like everybody was so stoked about Bruce Dickinson flying that plane, I was terrified. I'm like, I hope he ain't thinking of like new lyrics as he's like, flying those people.
Hopefully, there's some sort of screen for people like that who are in control of many other people's lives.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is too, it's going to sound weird, but a lot of artists, they say they get their inspiration in the shower for some reason. So I'm thinking of like coming up with a new idea called the studio/shower, like waterproof compressors and waterproof amps and waterproof like rigs, just so whenever this way they could write as the inspiration comes in there.
If you make that happen, send it to me. Send me one if you can.
Yeah, I will.
It'll be a whole installation, and showers sound terrible, so you're gonna have to. It's gonna be work.
Yeah, definitely. Gotta hit up some people in the pro audio industry about that.
You got it though.
Yeah,
I'm excited for you. I'm excited for everyone.
Thank you. And I have 2 more questions for you, but ready for the most difficult question of the whole interview?
Always.
All right. How do you know when a song is done?
It's a good question. For me, it's when every event. For me, it's when every question has been answered. Everything that has been established has been seen through to its point of satisfaction, and yeah, every event does something for you, and the whole thing hasn't outstayed its welcome. For me, I quite like to focus on writing bangers, which to me that basically just means from the jump to the end, you're engaged and you love it, and you just every twist and turn is something that's welcome to your ear. That's kind of how I look at it. But if you ask Brown the same question, he would tell you that, what does he say? He says a song's never really finished. You just have to abandon it when
I
it's
get that
I
get that every time, and I appreciate you giving me something different.
Cool. I'm glad.
Yeah. And the final question I wanted to ask you is I actually did see Monuments once. It was on the tour in 2016 that you did with the Contortionist and Entheos, which was a great show. I just finished all my classes in college like that day, and went and just totally like celebrated in that pit. It was amazing. But for you, is there a similar energy or a strategy that you channel into your live presence as you do when you're songwriting, or do you consider songwriting and playing live just 2 completely separate ball games altogether?
It's entirely different. I think for me, the only thread that connects them both would be the perfectionist element that unfortunately I'm afflicted with. So really just like being hard on myself if I mess something up, but it's a completely different ball game. You're a lot more free, I think, when you're performing live. It's just like you have a set thing that you know that you're supposed to do, and you have to just like deliver it. And then the vibe and the energy and the adrenaline and the fans and all that shit, that's just like a bonus. Whereas if you're songwriting, you're looking at a blank slate and you don't know what it's going to be. You don't really know what you're supposed to do. Sometimes you might have an idea of an entire song, and you can stop when you get to that point. But sometimes you're just looking into a completely blank canvas. You don't know about tempo or key or the vocals or what am I trying to say yet. You might just be vibing off an inspired moment you just had. So I think it's like, it's with there's no guaranteed success with songwriting. Whereas if you play a gig and you didn't mess up too much, that's what you're going for. So I think it's more set.
Yeah. Do you almost have to practice though, like crowd interaction or stage presence? Is that like something you have to prepare for, or does that just come like naturally when you least expect it?
I think it would be. I don't think it would be genuine or authentic if you practiced it. It gets better over time, and you learn things. You might see a little move that you might be on tour with a band. You see a little move or something that they're doing. You'd be like, "Yo, I can do that shit. That shit's sick." But outside of that, practice. No, I think that the more you do it, the more comfortable you are, and the more you'll let go and care less, maybe. But I haven't done any like in the mirror routines or anything like that.
Fair enough. Somebody once told me that they actually have like dolls set up to like pretend like that they like point their fingers at as they're playing.
I mean, do you know what? It's not. It's a whole. Like I said, it's a whole nother ball game. So if you need to do something to psych yourself up or get yourself into that mindset, being public speaking is an issue for a lot of people. It's an issue for me. I'll get a dry mouth. Like playing a gig is no issue, but if I'm like teaching in a college or something, and at the very beginning I'll be like, oh shit, it's a lot of eyes on me, even though I'm used to having a lot of eyes on me. But it's a completely different thing. So if you found a way to make the process and the experience more, just smoother for you, then by all means, why not?
Definitely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for a great discussion. Is there just anything else with Monuments that you would like to promote that you're allowed to talk about? Of course, this will be uploaded by midnight tonight. So, like when can we be like if there is new music in the works, or maybe a live stream performance, and obviously when this virus that shall not be named is finally behind us, we'll be seeing Monuments on the road quite a bit, right?
For sure. I've learned over time not to say anything, to be honest. But we are writing new music, and we're writing it as fast as we can, within limits. I mean, we're not trying to rush anything, but we're working full speed ahead to bring new music to people, and everything that comes with that, including playing live, merch, all that stuff. It's coming. So just bear with us, but it's happening. We're not on a hiatus. We're not sitting around. We're trying to get it done. So that's all I can really say.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Olly. Everybody, Olly of Monuments. This is Alex from Heavy New York.